You wake up, but instead of owning your morning, the world barges in. Before you've had a chance to collect a single thought, your fingers reach for your phone. It's automatic now. Headlines, alerts, endless noise. You tell yourself it's just for a minute. But when you finally look up, the silence of the morning is gone, and with it, your clarity. This isn't just habit. It's erosion of attention, of discipline, of self-respect. And for many men, especially past 30, it comes quietly. Not in the form of collapse, but in the slow decay of focus. We've traded moments of reflection for an endless drip of content. We can't sit through breakfast without needing to be entertained. We can't work for 20 minutes without craving a hit of novelty. But here's the truth. If your mind is constantly elsewhere, your life will be too. You've likely built your career through effort and discipline. But now, it's your attention that's under siege. Not from a boss or a system, but from distractions that feel harmless, yet pull you further away from your goals. The tragedy is, you might not even notice. The modern man is praised for being connected, but no one warns you what it costs. A scattered mind, shallow focus, a life ruled by algorithms instead of ambition. Ancient philosophers warned of this, not in words about phones or screens, but in questions about freedom. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "You become what you give your energy to." And what are you giving yours to? Short bursts of gratification that lead nowhere. Empty noise. Shiny illusions of productivity. But this isn't a guilt trip. This is a call to reclaim your mind, not through motivation, but through mastery. Start by making space. Reclaim the first hour of your day for yourself. No screens, no noise. Just you and your direction. Use that time to plan, read, reflect, write. It's not about adding more to your plate. It's about subtracting what doesn't serve you. Next, treat your attention like currency. Stop giving it away to things that don't build you. When you feel that twitch to check your phone, ask a harder question. What am I avoiding right now? Because the real battle isn't with the phone. It's with the silence. And until you learn to sit in that silence, you'll keep looking for escapes instead of growth. Finally, anchor yourself in discipline. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. Train yourself to focus, even when it's uncomfortable. Read longer, work deeper, move slower. These are the traits of a man building something meaningful. Not chasing approval, but cultivating presence. Because at this stage in life, you don't need more noise. You need clarity. And clarity starts where distraction ends. You want real change? Then don't just manage your time. Master your attention. That's how a man builds something that lasts, not through chaos, but through control. Number 1, you're wasting your time without realizing it. There's a quiet lie we keep telling ourselves, that we're too busy, that life just doesn't give us enough time to focus, to learn, to evolve. But what if the real issue isn't the lack of time, but the lack of ownership? Consider how often we drift, mentally disengaged, lost in cycles of low-effort stimulation. We open a screen, intending just a glance, and emerge an hour later, not nourished, but numbed. And when the day ends, we convince ourselves that we've earned the fatigue, when in truth, we've exhausted ourselves avoiding what actually matters. The Stoics warned us of this kind of life, a life dictated by impulses, ruled by comfort, stolen by habit. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet still carved out time to reflect and write. Not because he had leisure, but because he understood what most of us forget. Time is never truly ours, unless we claim it deliberately. Today's man faces a different empire, one of endless digital noise, shallow dopamine, and devices that have made our attention the most valuable commodity on Earth. The tragedy is not that these things exist, but that we surrender to them without resistance. In doing so, we abandon the very discipline required to build a life of meaning. Think about what that means. Every idle scroll, every task we postpone for the comfort of ease, is not just a lost minute. It's a step away from becoming the man we're capable of becoming. Not someday. Now, this isn't a motivational slogan. It's a challenge. Start reclaiming your time with small, grounded acts of control. Structure your evening to define your next morning. Limit your day to a few essential tasks. Not more, but deeper. When you begin something meaningful, don't wait for the mood to strike. Begin anyway, and let momentum replace motivation. When resistance shows up, and it will, don't fight it with willpower alone. Change the environment. Remove the triggers. Reduce the friction between you and the work that matters. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Real progress doesn't demand dramatic leaps. It asks for quiet discipline. 10 focused minutes repeated daily will outlast hours spent chasing inspiration. What matters isn't how loud your effort is, but how consistent. So ask yourself, not later, but now, where is your time actually going? And more importantly, what would change if you began treating it as sacred? Write it down. Share it. Not because you need praise, but because someone else out there might need your example to start. A year from now, your life will either echo the choices you're making today, or the excuses you've been repeating for years. No one can choose for you. Not society, not your phone, not even fate. Only you. Number 2, let the results speak. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post updates or collect applause. It grows in silence, built in the early mornings, the long nights, the hours no one sees. Not because it fears the world, but because it has chosen to face itself first. The modern world tells us to share every intention, every plan, every step of our so-called journey. We speak of goals before we've made effort. We chase praise before results. But real transformation doesn't start in the spotlight. It starts in solitude. Most people confuse noise with movement. They say they'll change. They say they'll build. But the brain is clever. Just talking about the goal gives a false sense of accomplishment. You feel rewarded without having earned it. The desire fades, and nothing changes. Men who live intentionally understand this trap. They resist the urge to declare. They train in the dark until their work becomes undeniable. They are not concerned with being noticed. They are focused on becoming undeniable. History's most disciplined thinkers, those who shaped philosophy, led empires, carved their names into the soul of time. They understood that action matters more than attention. They gave their lives to purpose, not performance. So how do you build something real? You begin in silence. You move without spectacle. You resist the need to be seen. You set goals quietly and meet them without ceremony. You measure your progress not by the noise it makes, but by the weight it carries. Celebrate wins in private. Let effort be your reward. When you feel the urge to share, ask yourself, do I want approval or do I want mastery? One feeds the ego, the other reshapes your life. And when the work is done, when you've become someone who no longer needs to announce anything, the world will see it anyway. The results will speak a language louder than words ever could. So today, choose the quiet path. Let others talk. You build, you refine, you grow. And when they finally notice, you won't need the praise. You'll have something far better: proof. Number 3, surround yourself with giants. Every man walks with a quiet influence at his side, often unnoticed, but always present. It isn't his ambition, his talent, or even his discipline. It's the people he allows into his daily life. We rarely realize how much our surroundings shape our thoughts. The tone of a conversation, the expectations of our peers, the energy of those closest to us. These become the invisible boundaries of who we believe we can be. Not through force, but repetition. If you spend your days surrounded by those who mock growth, who fear discomfort, who retreat into cynicism at the first sign of difficulty, don't be surprised when your own goals begin to decay. Not because you're weak, but because you're absorbing a mindset that works against everything you're trying to build. Human nature is tribal. We adapt to belong. And without noticing, we adjust our effort to match the standards of the group. That's why sitting among people who demand excellence, who embody purpose, self-respect, and grit, naturally raises your bar. You feel their presence in your posture, in your language, in your decisions. You start to carry yourself differently, not to impress them, but because you've remembered what you're capable of. The ancient thinkers understood this. They didn't just teach philosophy in isolation. They lived it through their communities. Stoics didn't merely preach virtue. They gathered with others who sharpened their thinking. The company you keep is not background noise. It's the climate in which your character grows or withers. Maybe you felt it. You try to pursue something higher, but you're met with smirks. You mention improvement, and you're told to relax or stop overthinking. Slowly, their comfort becomes your cage, and their doubt seeps into your confidence. This isn't a call for arrogance or superiority. It's a call for awareness. You don't need to cut people off. You need to reclaim the steering wheel. Guard your attention. Be intentional with your exposure. If you're serious about growth, proximity becomes a sacred filter. Not everyone gets access to your vision. If those around you drain your energy, lower your standards, or subtly mock your ambition, it's not sustainable to pretend it doesn't affect you. It does. It always does. And if you don't course correct, you'll look back a decade from now and wonder why your life looks exactly like theirs. Here's the antidote. Seek out voices that elevate you. Not entertainers, but examples. Men who have built through discipline. Thinkers who challenge you to refine, not just perform. And when you can't find them in person, find them in books, in silence, in stories of those who came before you. A powerful environment doesn't require noise. It requires intentionality. Because in the end, your habits become your life. But your habits are forged in the atmosphere you move through every day. So ask yourself, is your environment fertilizing your potential? Or is it suffocating it under the weight of small expectations? And more importantly, what are you willing to change to breathe again? Number 4, practice mental minimalism. There's a reason you feel stretched thin, mentally restless, yet oddly unproductive. It's not that your days are too short or that you lack ambition. It's that your mind has become a crowded hallway, cluttered with voices, worries, and information that have no business being there. Modern life doesn't steal your time as much as it fragments your attention. You wake up, and before your feet touch the floor, the noise begins. Alerts, updates, headlines. You're handed a menu of other people's problems before you've had a chance to consider your own priorities. We've been conditioned to equate being informed with being intelligent. But what passes as information today is often emotional residue, raw, unfiltered, and mostly irrelevant. The human mind wasn't designed to process 1,000 crises from around the globe before noon. It was designed to solve the problems within arm's reach. When you fill your consciousness with tragedy you can't change, arguments you're not part of, and curated images meant to provoke envy or outrage, don't be surprised when your energy feels diluted. You weren't meant to carry the weight of the world. You were meant to carry your weight, and do it well. Clarity, like strength, comes from subtraction, not addition. The Stoics understood this. They didn't run from the world, but they didn't invite every voice into their mind either. They practiced restraint not out of apathy, but because they recognized the price of mental chaos. Epictetus didn't measure wisdom by how much you know, but by how much you've mastered. And mastery requires stillness. Stillness is rare now, because stillness requires boundaries. If your thoughts feel scattered, it's because your mental gate has no guard. Every piece of news, every social feed, every stranger's complaint is given a seat at your table. Eventually, the people you don't know are shaping the life you're trying to build. You don't need a full digital detox to reclaim your peace, but you do need discernment. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything qualifies as relevant. Start filtering the noise with 3 questions. Is this mine? Is this useful? Is this helping me grow? If not, shut the door. You don't owe your mental bandwidth to the entire internet. And if you feel disconnected from yourself, it's probably because you've been too connected to everything else. So start small. Read something timeless instead of trending. Make time for deep work instead of shallow updates. Turn your mornings into a ritual of intention instead of reaction. Give your mind space again. Let it breathe, stretch, and reflect. Because when your inner world is overcrowded, there's no room for insight, only interference. And a distracted man, no matter how smart or ambitious, becomes easy to control. By noise, by urgency, by everyone else's agenda. So ask yourself, is your attention being rented out to the world? Or are you investing it in your own evolution? Until you protect your mental environment, you'll be too exhausted to build anything of your own. Clean the space, clear the air. And remember, peace isn't passive. It's earned, guarded, and practiced. Number 5. Does it make you uncomfortable? Then you're on the right path. There is a quiet war happening inside every man. It's not between good and evil. It's not about success or failure. It's the daily choice between staying the same or becoming someone more. This war doesn't announce itself. There are no trumpets, no flags. It begins in subtle moments, when the alarm rings before dawn and your bed whispers stay. When a hard conversation needs to be had, but silence feels easier. When a new path calls you forward, but comfort pulls you back. You know these moments. We all do. And in those moments, the voice that wins isn't the loudest. It's the one we listen to most. Discomfort isn't your enemy. It's the only honest mirror you'll ever meet. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't negotiate. It simply asks, are you willing to earn what you say you want? Most people aren't. They'd rather keep the fantasy alive than pay the price for the real thing. They want confidence without challenge, strength without strain, transformation without tension. But growth doesn't come from what feels good. It comes from the tension between who you are and who you could become, if you stopped avoiding the hard parts. Look around. The people you respect, the ones who move with calm authority, who don't flinch in storms, weren't born that way. They were shaped by thousands of unseen battles. Moments where they chose discomfort over ease, progress over pride, discipline over impulse. Not because they loved pain, but because they loved who they were, becoming more than who they were. The ancient Stoics didn't talk about chasing happiness. They spoke of self-command, of preparing yourself for the weight of life, not hoping for ease, but developing endurance. They saw suffering not as punishment, but as purification. And they understood this truth. You cannot carry greatness with soft hands. In a world where everything is engineered for convenience, discomfort has become sacred. It's the gateway to everything real. So the question is not whether it's hard. Of course it's hard. That's the point. The question is, are you ready to stop waiting for life to be easier and start making yourself sharper? Discomfort doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be quiet. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing what you start. Saying no when it's easier to say yes. Choosing depth when the world begs for distraction. It's not about punishing yourself. It's about respecting yourself enough to do what's necessary, especially when it's not convenient. There will always be a reason to quit, a reason to postpone, a reason to wait for better timing. But the men who move forward aren't waiting. They're walking straight into the resistance. And they're building strength, not in spite of it, but because of it. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something that genuinely demanded more of you? Not for approval, not for appearance, but for the man you're becoming. If you can't remember, it's time. Because if you're always avoiding the fire, you'll never become the steel. Number 6, not everything deserves your energy. There is a kind of strength few people recognize because it doesn't shout, it doesn't retaliate, and it rarely seeks to prove itself. A man sat alone at a train station. A delay had stalled every traveler. Voices grew louder, tempers flared. People cursed the heat, the incompetence, the inconvenience. A younger man standing nearby muttered bitterly, looking for someone to join him in frustration. The older man remained still, reading quietly, unmoved by the noise around him. Eventually, the younger man snapped. "Doesn't any of this bother you?" he asked almost accusingly. "Don't you care that your time's being wasted?" The old man closed his book, looked up and replied, "I care too much about my time to give it away to irritation." That one sentence said more than the shouting ever could. You see, most people don't realize how quickly they give away their power, not to governments or disasters, but to the smallest annoyances. An impatient driver, a passive-aggressive message, an unfair opinion, a harmless delay. They react, they absorb, they respond as if the world owes them comfort, and every discomfort is a personal attack. But here's what the wisest among us understand. You cannot control what enters your life, but you can control what you absorb. There's no shortage of things to be angry about. But if you treat every frustration like a battle, you'll have no strength left for the war that actually matters, the one inside yourself. We live in a time where outrage is currency. Everyone is trying to provoke a reaction. Every platform rewards volatility. And every day, we are tempted to surrender our emotional clarity in exchange for momentary indignation. But what do we lose in the process? Energy, focus, peace, the ability to respond, not just react, and worst of all, the connection to our own values. You say you want to live intentionally, to build something meaningful. But how can you build anything if your mind is hijacked by every minor disturbance? Let's be clear. Responding to everything that offends you is not strength. Strength is having the patience to pause and the wisdom to walk away. There is no honor in burning your energy on things beneath your purpose. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were disciplined. They practiced the art of restraint because they knew the cost of reactivity. Marcus Aurelius didn't teach detachment for its own sake. He taught it because a life ruled by external events is no life at all. You are not a machine. You are a craftsman, and attention is your most valuable tool, so treat it accordingly. Before you respond, ask, does this deserve my energy? Will it matter in a month, a year, or even tomorrow? You'll find that most things don't deserve a reply. They deserve release. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to correct every misconception. You don't need to internalize every unkind word. What you need is clarity, discipline, and above all, presence. Protect your energy not because you're fragile, but because what you're building requires it. Let others waste theirs in chaos. Yours is meant for creation. And when others try to pull you into their storms, remember, you don't owe your peace to anyone. You owe it to yourself, to hold it, guard it, and use it well. Number 7, learn to be alone. There's a space within you that most people never visit. Not because it's locked, not because it's hidden, but because it's terrifying in its silence. That space is solitude, not the absence of others, but the presence of yourself. It's where your true nature lives, beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the rituals you've been taught to perform for the sake of fitting in. In the modern world, being alone is often mistaken for failure. A man sitting by himself is assumed to be incomplete, lacking connection, or waiting for something, or someone, to give his life meaning. But maybe that man is doing what few ever dare, confronting himself without distraction, without masks, without escape. The reason most people fear solitude isn't because it's empty. It's because it's honest. When you strip away the conversations, the scrolling, the stimulation, you are left with one thing: the truth of your own mind. And if you haven't spent time understanding that mind, it can feel like stepping into a house you never built. But ask yourself, why would something so natural feel so foreign? You are not born needing constant input. You learn to crave it. The endless notifications, the digital companionship, the illusion of belonging in a world that thrives on urgency and reaction. They conditioned you to believe that silence equals loneliness and stillness equals stagnation. But the reality is the opposite. True transformation doesn't happen in noise. It doesn't happen in a crowd. It doesn't happen while you're chasing validation. It happens in the quiet corners of your life where no one else is watching, where your only audience is your own conscience. That's where your values are tested. That's where your strength is forged. Solitude is not a punishment. It is a proving ground. It is where you learn whether you actually believe the things you say, whether you can withstand your own doubt, and whether you've been living according to your own principles, or merely echoing those of others. You don't need to retreat to a cabin in the woods to experience this. You only need to stop hiding from yourself. Try sitting in a room without reaching for your phone. Go for a walk without music or a podcast. Eat without background noise. Let your thoughts arrive unfiltered, unedited, uninterrupted. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, like trying to stand on legs that have forgotten how to walk without crutches. You'll hear the voice of your insecurity, the voice of your past, the voice of everything you've tried to ignore. Let them speak. That's how they lose power. Because something remarkable happens when you sit with yourself long enough. The noise fades. The mind steadies. And a new voice rises, not louder, but clearer, not external, but yours. It doesn't beg for likes or approval. It doesn't worry about image. It simply knows who you are and what you're meant to do. And once you hear that voice, you'll realize something profound. You are not lonely when you're alone. You are only lonely when you've been disconnected from yourself. The man who masters solitude is no longer at the mercy of the world. He doesn't chase relationships out of desperation. He doesn't join conversations that drain him. He doesn't shapeshift to be accepted. He builds a foundation so strong that others are drawn to it, not because he needs them, but because he's become someone worth knowing. If you truly want to change your life, stop asking others to reflect your worth. Create space. Sit with yourself. Listen deeply. You'll find what no noise can give you: clarity. And with clarity comes strength. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. The kind that no one can take from you because it was built in a place only you could reach. That's the power of solitude. And it's waiting for you. Number 8, train your mind. Most people spend years building their lives outward, careers, relationships, routines, while leaving their inner world untouched. They never realize that the most vital part of their life isn't their calendar, their job, or their obligations. It's their attention. It's their mind. And like any tool, if it's not sharpened, it dulls. If it's not directed, it wanders. And if it's not protected, it becomes the property of everything and everyone around it. The modern world is brilliant at stealing your mind. It doesn't need to break you. It only needs to scatter you. Through endless notifications, urgent requests, and the illusion that you owe everyone a piece of yourself, immediately and without question. But here's the truth most people never face. A mind that reacts to everything cannot build anything. Not peace, not progress, not purpose. And the mind, untrained, unguarded, starts to decay, not with failure, but with noise. Not with collapse, but with constant interruption. To live without mental discipline is to surrender the steering wheel of your life while pretending you're still the one driving. The great thinkers, those who shaped nations, built ideas that outlived them, did not rely on talent alone. They cultivated mental strength like a soldier sharpens instinct. They practiced awareness. They questioned their own impulses. They made space, each day, to remind themselves of what truly mattered and what didn't. And this kind of discipline, it's not reserved for emperors or monks. It's necessary for anyone who wants to live on their own terms. Because here's what most never realize until it's too late. If you do not make yourself your top priority, your energy will be consumed by everything else. I've lived it. I know what it's like to be available to everyone but myself. Every message answered mid-thought. Every request met without hesitation. Every plan of mine postponed for someone else's urgency. I wore it like a badge of honor, until I realized I was quietly abandoning the life I was trying to build. You do that long enough, and something breaks. You stop trusting yourself. You start reacting more than you act. You begin to confuse being needed with being you. So I made a change, not with grand declarations, but quiet resistance. I began protecting my mental bandwidth like it was sacred, because it is. When a message came in, I let it wait. When someone asked for something, I took a breath and checked in with my priorities before responding. When I sat down to work, I stayed, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It wasn't easy. The guilt was real. The temptation was constant. But every time I held the line, something happened. My focus grew sharper, my choices got clearer, and my life began to feel like it belonged to me again. If you want that, here's what I'd offer. Not as rules, but as reminders. Don't start your day by checking in with the world. Start by checking in with yourself. Ask, what do I want to move forward today? Not for others, for me. And then protect that space, ruthlessly. Not because others don't matter, but because you can't give them anything of value if you've given yourself nothing first. Train your mind the way you'd train your body, through repetition, challenge, and rest. Read deeply, write slowly, listen to silence, finish things. Let your mind know it works for you, not the other way around. And most importantly, stop apologizing for needing focus. Stop explaining why your time matters. You don't need permission to guard your mind. You only need the willingness to face what happens when you do. Because the people who create, who lead, who change, aren't the ones who said yes to everything. They're the ones who said no to everything that threatened their clarity. So if you're serious about becoming who you were meant to be, don't just manage your time. Command your mind. That's the difference between drifting through life and designing it. Number 9, just do it. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize the clock doesn't stop just because they haven't started. And yet, most of us live as if we're waiting for something. Some perfect alignment of motivation, confidence, resources, or readiness. We tell ourselves we'll begin when things feel more certain, when the fear quiets down, when the way becomes clear. But clarity isn't a precondition for movement. It's often the result of it. The world isn't waiting for you to be ready. Life continues, with or without your permission. And in that quiet truth lies both the burden and the freedom. You can start at any time. No one is stopping you, except you. The myth of the perfect moment is one of the most seductive lies we're taught. It convinces us that hesitation is wisdom, that preparation is progress, that perfection is a prerequisite. It's not. The truth is more brutal and more liberating. Action precedes mastery. Always. The people you admire didn't arrive where they are because they waited for the right time. They began long before they were qualified. They said yes before they had answers. They moved, awkwardly, inconsistently, imperfectly, but they moved. And with movement came momentum. With repetition came confidence. With failure came resilience. That's the formula no one wants to tell you, because it's not glamorous. It doesn't look good on social media. It's silent, gritty, deeply personal work. It's the work of becoming. And here's the part no one teaches. Your fear of starting is often not fear of the task. It's fear of who you'll become once you commit. Because movement demands transformation. It forces you to shed the version of yourself that is addicted to delay. And that shedding feels like loss, until you see what you gain in return. Your power doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from choosing something and moving toward it like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. Every day you postpone your goals, they become less yours. They start to belong to doubt, to comfort, to other people's expectations. Eventually, you forget they were yours to begin with. That's how potential dies. Not with rejection, but with erosion. So here's the shift. Stop romanticizing readiness. Start respecting movement. You don't need more certainty. You need to make a decision and act. Not perfectly, not publicly, quietly, repeatedly. Pick up the book, send the message, build the thing, say the words, fail forward, get back up, and do it again tomorrow. The results you want don't come from visualization. They come from execution, not from talking about discipline, but from proving it to yourself in the smallest, most invisible ways. You don't need a motivational quote. You need a moment of courage and the willingness to let that moment be enough to begin. So ask yourself, what's the smallest action you've been avoiding that could start a chain reaction? Take that step. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait for the fear to vanish. Let it come with you. Because a life of intention isn't built by those who think about doing. It's built by those who do it anyway. Thank you for watching. If this message spoke to you, let us know in the comments. What are you committing to today? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. Your journey starts now.